The late afternoon sun burned over Red Creek, Texas, turning the dusty streets golden. Inside the town's busiest saloon, an old rancher named Samuel Carter stood quietly near the bar, counting the few coins in his weathered hand. He was 72, thin, gray-haired, and known for helping anyone who needed him. That day, however, 3 rough men surrounded him, accusing him of stealing money he had never touched. Samuel tried explaining, but nobody listened. The biggest man grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wooden wall. Glasses rattled across the shelves. "Old fool," the man growled. "You should have known better than to cross us." Samuel's hands trembled, but he refused to beg. The saloon fell strangely silent as everyone watched. Near the back corner, however, a nameless cowboy sat alone beneath a dusty lamp. Nobody knew his name. He had arrived in Red Creek that morning on a tired black horse, wearing a faded brown coat and a battered hat. He had spoken to no one, ordered only coffee, and spent hours quietly watching the town. Some assumed he was a drifter. Others thought he was running from trouble. Whatever his story, he looked completely uninterested in the fight. Yet when Samuel's collar tore under the attacker's fist, the stranger slowly lifted his eyes. "Let him go," the cowboy said. His voice was calm, almost too calm. The men laughed. The largest one turned toward him. "This doesn't concern you, stranger." The cowboy stood. He moved without hurry, pushing his chair beneath the table. "I said let him go." The saloon owner swallowed nervously. Something about the stranger's confidence made the room colder. Samuel looked at him, confused, as if trying to remember where he had seen that face before. The attacker shoved Samuel aside and reached for the cowboy. "You think you're tough," he sneered. The cowboy stepped forward. Before anyone could react, he caught the man's wrist, twisted it, and forced him to his knees. The movement was so fast that nobody even saw exactly how it happened. The second man drew a pistol, but the cowboy kicked the weapon from his hand before it cleared the holster. The gun slid across the floor and stopped beneath a table. The third man froze. The cowboy stared at him. "Walk away." The man did not argue. He grabbed his fallen companion and dragged him toward the door. The biggest man, still kneeling, glared upward. "Who are you?" he demanded. The cowboy released his wrist and answered quietly, "Nobody you need to know." Then he returned to his coffee as though nothing had happened. Samuel adjusted his torn collar and stared at the stranger with growing curiosity. Outside, the 3 men disappeared into the dusty sunset. Samuel approached the cowboy carefully. "Thank you," he said. The stranger nodded. "You don't owe me anything." Samuel smiled sadly. "Around here, kindness usually comes with a price." The cowboy looked toward the window. "Then maybe this town has forgotten what kindness is." Samuel studied him. "You're not from Texas." The cowboy smiled faintly. "No, sir." Before Samuel could ask more, the saloon door opened again. A well-dressed woman entered, followed by 2 frightened ranch hands. Her name was Eleanor Hayes, owner of the largest cattle operation in Red Creek. She looked directly at Samuel. "Mr. Carter, they came for you?" Samuel nodded. Eleanor's eyes moved toward the stranger. Her expression changed instantly. She recognized something in the cowboy's posture, though she could not place it. "Have we met?" she asked. The cowboy shook his head. "Not that I remember." Eleanor remained suspicious, but said nothing. That evening, Samuel walked home through the quiet streets. He had barely reached his porch when he noticed the same black horse tied near the fence. The nameless cowboy stood beneath an old oak tree. "You followed me?" Samuel asked. "I wanted to make sure you got home safely." Samuel sighed. "Those men weren't after my money. They wanted my land." The cowboy looked toward the ranch. "How much?" Samuel shook his head. "Everything my father left me." The cowboy's expression hardened. Samuel explained that a powerful developer had been buying ranches throughout the county. Those who refused suddenly faced accusations, threats, or mysterious debts. Samuel had refused to sell. The men at the saloon were hired muscle. "They'll come back," Samuel whispered. The cowboy nodded. "I know." Samuel asked, "Why do you care?" The cowboy looked at the stars. "Because once, an old man helped me when nobody else would." Samuel stared at him. "Who was he?" The cowboy smiled. "You were." Samuel's eyes widened. He remembered a hungry teenage runaway arriving at his ranch 30 years earlier. He had given the boy food, work, and a place to sleep. The boy disappeared after several months. Samuel had never learned what became of him. "You," he whispered. The cowboy removed his hat. A small scar crossed his eyebrow. Samuel suddenly remembered. Jacob, the stranger nodded. I wondered if you'd remember. Samuel embraced him, tears filling his eyes. Jacob held him tightly, finally revealing his true name. The next morning, Jacob rode with Samuel to the courthouse. They discovered that the developer had filed documents claiming Samuel's land belonged to him. Jacob examined the papers carefully. These signatures are forged. Samuel frowned. How can you tell? Jacob pointed to a date. Your wife died 6 years ago. This document says she signed it last year. Samuel stared at the page. They immediately contacted the county judge and a federal land investigator Jacob knew from his years working as a range detective. By noon, the truth began spreading through Red Creek. The developer's men had forged deeds for several ranchers. But they had made one mistake. They had threatened the wrong old man in front of too many witnesses. The saloon owner agreed to testify. So did several ranch hands. Even Eleanor Hayes provided records proving the developer had pressured her to sell her property. Suddenly, the powerful businessman who had terrified the town found himself surrounded by evidence. That evening, the same 3 men returned to Samuel's ranch, expecting him to be alone. Instead, Jacob stood on the porch beside him. Behind them were ranchers from across Red Creek. The men stopped their horses. This doesn't have to become ugly, Jacob said. The largest man laughed nervously. You can't stop all of us. Jacob pointed toward the road. I don't have to. The law is already waiting. In the distance, sheriff's vehicles appeared through the dust. The men slowly surrendered. Weeks later, Red Creek changed. The developer was arrested for fraud, intimidation, and forgery. The ranchers kept their land. Samuel repaired his old barn and planted new trees along the property line. Jacob stayed, though he still refused to call himself anything important. One evening, Samuel asked him why he never told anyone about his past. Jacob looked across the sunset and smiled. Because I learned something from you. A person's name doesn't matter nearly as much as what he does when someone needs help. Samuel laughed softly. You saved me. Jacob shook his head. You saved me first. They stood together beneath the fading Texas sky. For years, Red Creek had remembered the stranger as the nameless cowboy who walked into a saloon and stopped 3 violent men. But Samuel knew the truth. Jacob had not become a hero that day. He had simply returned the kindness he had received long ago. And from that moment forward, nobody in Red Creek ever grabbed an old man by the collar again.